Welcome to a new story. In California in 2011, there was a horrific murder and security cameras was fully filming this crime from the beginning to the end. The crime was frightening and violent, and the killer is a bold serial killer and is not afraid to be arrested. Our story today is vague and surprising, especially in the latter part of it. The story began in the city of Yorba Linda when an unknown person called the emergency and told them that there was a crime in a nearby house. The call was at 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday, October 2011, and the anonymous caller said he heard screams from a house that had passed him by. The police immediately went to the house where the unknown person had shown them. The door of the house was open, and when they entered they found a large amount of blood on the floor of the house. They traced the traces of blood until they got to the living room, and there they found two mutilated bodies of a lady and a young man. The bodies were stabbed, so many stab wounds. The scene was so horrific and blood everywhere. The murdered lady was 53-year-old Raquel Strada, and the young man was her 33-year-old son, Juan Carlos Herrera. Investigators began searching the house in the hope that they would find any evidence of the perpetrator. They found a footprint on a bloodstain, but noticed that the victims were not wearing shoes. This would be the footprint of the killer's shoes, and investigators also noticed other evidence such as blood on the doorstep of the house and a food knife stained with little blood, and observed traces of body dragging, and there was no theft in the house, and this suggests that the killer knew the details of the house and the victims. Of the number of stabbings suffered by the victims, investigators concluded that there was a relationship between the killer and the victims, and here the investigators wondered, who was the person who committed this heinous crime? And why did he do this crime? The owner of the house where the crime occurred told the police that the victims were living with a third person in the same house. This person is Eder Herrera, son of Raquel and little brother of Carlos. Eder Herrera was 24 years old, but police could not tell where he was or where he had disappeared. Would Eder Herrera be the killer? Or is he another victim? The most important step the police had was to find Eder quickly. The investigators began gathering information about the family, finding that the Raquel Strada family immigrated from Mexico in 1993, and Raquel was working cleaning houses, Carlos and Eder working cleaning parking lots and warehouses. Raquel's family was interconnected and stable and had good relations with neighbors. And here the police started questioning the neighbors in order to find information that would help them find the killer. A neighbor told the police he heard a voice coming from Raquel's house saying, "Help me, help me." I went out to see what was happening. I found someone standing on the doorstep of Raquel's house, and that person was trying to get a couch or something inside the house, and he also said that this person was probably Raquel's little son. But I didn't confirm it because of the darkness. And here the evidence was linked that Carlos had escaped the killer to the door of the house and was affected by the stab wounds he had suffered, and the killer dragged him inside the house. After questioning the neighbors, the police began searching for Eder throughout the city, but they did not find him. As autopsies, the doctor said that Raquel had suffered 30 stab wounds, and Carlos was hit with about 60 stab wounds, and also said that the depth and shape of the wounds indicated the killer's use of a large knife such as that used by soldiers in the army, and here the police got information indicating where Eder was hiding and immediately arrested. Investigators began questioning Eder and told him what had happened to his family. Eder was shocked by the news and said that on the night of the crime he was coming home and found in front of the house a lot of police cars, and he came back scared and hid in his friend's house. Investigators couldn't believe Eder's unreasonable speech because a neighbor said he saw Eder on the doorstep during the murder. Eder became the main and only accused in the case, but Eder denied this charge and said that he loved his family and could not do anything like this to them. Eder was imprisoned, and 2 months later there was a woman walking in the morning by the river. This woman by accident found a man killed under the bridge. and she immediately informed the police the murdered man was a homeless Jimmy. And the police found a lot of stab wounds to Jimmy's body, and the coroner also said that the crime device was a strong, sharp knife because it could penetrate the skull bone and break the ribs of the rib cage. And also said that Jimmy had suffered 60 deep stab wounds to the head and chest area. The police knew that the killer knew exactly what he was doing and had the experience of targeting sensitive areas in the victim's body. Also, as the police noted a great similarity between the way Raquel and her son were killed and the way Jimmy was killed, is there a murderer other than Eder? Or was Eder not involved in the crime from the outset? Several days later there was also a new murder. This time the victim was a 52-year-old homeless James. News of the new crime spread in the city and people began to fear this unknown killer. The new crime was similar to previous crimes, but in the James case there was significant evidence. The night the crime happened, James was lying next to a small wall, and the side of the wall was a security camera, and the camera filmed the whole crime. In the recorded video, the killer is seen dressed in black and the police could not identify him, but it was clear how vicious and violent the killer was. The investigators guessed that the killer might have been trained in the army, which explains his superior experience in using the military knife in which he stabbed the victims. And on December 30th, a week after James' murder, police discovered a new body on the street. This time the victim was 57-year-old Paul Smith, a homeless man sleeping on the street. This crime was in broad daylight, and this indicates that the criminal is no longer afraid of the police. At this time, Eder Herrera was still in prison and awaiting trial. Eder was hearing about these crimes and was sure that they were responsible for the same killer who killed his family. About a month later, the police were still searching and gathering evidence of the killer. And people were trying to help the police with any information, at which time the police received a phone call from a 64-year-old homeless John Perry. Perry says in the call that he noticed someone watching him from afar. John Perry had appeared a week ago in an interview with the press, and apparently caught the killer's attention, and Perry also said that he was not afraid of anyone and that the person watching him was dressed in black. On January 13, 2012, a patrol cop was notified that there was a crime now happening on a street near him. And there's a man who's a witness, and this guy ran after the killer and kept chasing him after he told the police. The police arrived and the criminal was arrested. The criminal was a 23-year-old Scott Ocampo. Ocampo was a former Navy soldier who was demobilized after participating in the Iraq War. Detectives were shocked by the killer's age, but the biggest shock was when they knew the identity of the last victim killed by Ocampo. It was homeless John Perry who told the police that someone was watching him. After investigating Ocampo, he admitted that he was carrying out these crimes because he believed that the displaced were a burden on society. And also said that while serving in the Navy he had not killed anyone like his colleagues. This made him feel inadequate and in need of murder, and he said he only killed John Perry because he saw him in the paper. News broke that the killer had been arrested, and that news had reached Eder Herrera in prison. And here Eder was shocked when he knew who the killer was, because Ocampo was Eder's best friend. As they have been friends since their high school studies, hanging out together, and sometimes Ocampo, Herrera's family shared dinner at their home. And also Ocampo has lived in Herrera's house for a while. The police also searched Ocampo's house and found the knife he was using in military shoes. And strangely, the shoes had traces of blood, and when they analyzed that blood, they found that it was the blood of Raquel and her son Carlos. And Ocampo admitted that he had done all the previous crimes and explained how he had tried to change the crime scene at Raquel's house, and he called the police the night of the murder. This means that if this recorded call had been displayed and heard by Eder Herrera, he would have been able to recognize the voice of his friend Ocampo. Ocampo's story did not end here. In 2013, in prison, Ocampo decided to take his own life and died as a result of taking a quantity of detergent tablets. It is strange in this story that Ocampo's father was then homeless and sleeping on the street. His father was in disbelief that his son had done this to displaced persons. He said that Ocampo had contacted me and was afraid that he would hurt me. He said that Ocampo, when he returned from the Iraq War, was a different person and was psychopath and in need of treatment. Eder Herrera was released and compensated for $700,000. The hero of this story is the man who witnessed John Perry's crime and pursued Ocampo and told the police. Because of the bravery of this man, this case was resolved. This is the end of our story today. I hope you will like it and support us. Good night.